Education and Learning Environment in Pakistan panel at the Indus Conclave 2022. मेरा नाम Zishan Salahuddin है. I serve as the director for the Center for Regional and Global Connectivity at Tabad Lab. Tabad Lab is a advisory services and think tank based out of Islamabad. First, I would like to very much thank the Dunia Foundation for putting this entire massive event together. I think these kind of conversations badi zaruri hain. They're quite integral for Pakistan and for Pakistanis. The other thing that I want to mention is that I feel a little strange sitting up here on the stage with four females who are absolute champions of the education space within Pakistan, and sitting up here as a very unqualified individual makes me feel like I'm in the presence of giants. But I'm very grateful to my panelists for being here, for sparing their time. उनका मैं थोड़ा सा अगर आपको उनकी introduction आपको करवा दूं, so you have an idea of how rich and deep the conversation today is going to be. First, we have Ms. Sahar Said. Ms. Sahar Said is the Deputy Director for Research at ITA, the Idara Talim o Agahi, where she works with project teams to define research priorities and strategy for the entire organization. Ms. Said is a project management and implementation specialist with over 6 years of experience in the education sector in Pakistan. And she is going to help us sort of set the baseline foundational agenda for the conversation, जो कि आज हम करेंगे. उनके साथ we have Fajr Rabia. She has over 17 years of experience in social entrepreneurship, leadership, education, especially girls' education, as we spoke a short while back. And she is the Executive Director of the Pakistan Alliance for Girls' Education, or PAGE. PAGE was launched on the sidelines of the 2013 World Innovation Summit for Education and acts as a platform for stakeholders, donors, policymakers, and practitioners to address the gender gap in education and create collaborative solutions, which I think at this point, given कि हमारे बहुत सारे existential crises हो चुके हैं पाकिस्तान में, including the pandemic, including the floods, is more important than ever. Next to Fajr Rabia, we have Gule Maryam Wattu. Gule Maryam is a board member of the Punjab Curriculum and Textbook Board and the National Curriculum Council of Pakistan. She is also the director of the Rural Development Foundation for Pakistan, specifically within the Okara district. And she directs schools in rural areas of Haveli Lakha, bridging gaps in education for hundreds of students in rural areas and ensuring subsequent employment for them once they have graduated. When we come to Gule Maryam, I think we'll also speak about some of the schools that she's been running and some of the learning lessons that lie there, lie within. And finally, at the very end of the line, we have Lala Rukh Fazlur Rahman. Lala Rukh is the founder and director of Science Fuse, a startup working on changing how science is perceived and communicated both inside and outside classrooms in Pakistan. Lala Rukh's passion for promoting interest in specifically STEM education in Pakistan has led her into social entrepreneurship, several fellowships in leadership and development, and currently she is a member of the Education Champions Network at the Malala Fund. So a very warm round of applause for our panelists who have joined us this afternoon for this conversation. I just want to say very quickly, मैं बहुत ज़्यादा आपका time नहीं लूँगा. Like I said, I feel very awkward and very unqualified to speak on this particular panel, but I'm happy to at least guide the conversation in whatever capacity that I can. Learning and education in Pakistan, I think, is has become over the course of time a fairly complex subject, and there's a lot of aspects and components to it that we will try to cover some of over the course of this conversation. हमारा structure ये होगा that each one of the panelists is going to speak for about 6 to 7 minutes each within their specific area of expertise. और उसके बाद हम audience के लिए हम थोड़ा सा खोल देंगे for Q&A. Regarding Q&A, I think one of the things that perhaps I would like the audience to sort of think about जब हम ये conversation कर रहे होंगे is what are some of the ways that we can look at education in Pakistan in terms of prioritizing it, both in terms of political will as well as the financial capital that is spent on it to bring it up to par with the rest of the world wherever possible. Education के बारे में मैं शुरू में सिर्फ इतना ही कहूँगा कि I think after the pandemic, according to some estimates, we've had learning losses within schools. जो बच्चे स्कूल नहीं गए या तालीम नहीं हासिल कर सके, by some estimates between 0.3 to 0.8 years. There's been an advent of teleschooling. There's been an advent of digital learning. This pandemic and especially the floods now have, sort of disproportionately affected girls. They have affected vulnerable populations. They have affected rural populations, especially areas that are very inaccessible, particularly after the floods. And there's a lot of conversation now about के mitigate जो करना है in learning losses को वो किस तरह से किया जाए, कहाँ से किया जाए, what are some of the challenges and opportunities as far as this is concerned. So बहुत सारे पहलू हैं इसके, बहुत सारी चीजें हैं, but I think to start off, I will request Ms. Saeed to perhaps set the stage a little bit and speak to us about where education and learning in Pakistan currently stands. What are the main obstacles and challenges and opportunities that it affords us? And perhaps just a little bit about how is it that we can generate more political will towards addressing some of these challenges.
Thank you so much, Zishan. Assalamu alaikum to everyone. So as you know, Zishan has mentioned that Pakistan already is in a state of education emergency. So the last 10 years, we already know that, many of the children actually do not go to school. And those actually who go to school do not come out as well learned, as well educated that somebody is supposed to be. So at ITA, we conduct this annual Status of Education report, which is the largest citizen-led survey which is conducted across Pakistan. And every year we provide estimates to the government that how many kids are not going to school, and those who are actually enrolled, those who say that they go to school, whether they learn or not, by conducting a very simple kind of a test, which is in Urdu, English, and arithmetic, 3 basic competencies, just to see whether a child who is actually, who commits and who says that he is going to school, whether, he actually can pass a simple test of Urdu, English, arithmetic or not. And surprisingly, for the last 15 years since we were actually producing the report for every year, surprisingly, we always come out, we come out to see the same kind of an estimates, that more than 50% of children in Pakistan residing in rural areas are not able to read a simple paragraph, a simple story in Urdu, simple 4-line sentence in English, and can't even solve a simple 2-digit division or subtraction sums. And that was prior to pandemic, right? And now after the pandemic, we had like a very long period of school closures. And according to some estimates, 4 million children in Pakistan were actually affected when they were not going to school. So in Pakistan, of course, the federal government as well as the provincial government started off with their own mitigation strategies and started off with Tele-Talim and Telegar kind of initiatives, which were there to actually support the kids who are actually not going to school so that they can learn a bit, while they're at home. Magar hame pata hai ki while, even while we reside in urban areas, there are lots of challenges. There are internet connectivity issues. Sometimes parents also can't give a phone or a tablet to a child that often. And if a child is holding a tablet or holding a phone, a mother or a father, a caretaker has to sit with the child just to ensure that, he or she is able to undertake the entire session. So even that also came out to be very problematic, by the way. After the pandemic also, we conducted several studies just to understand that what kind of strategies were taken by the government and to what extent they were fruitful. And more than 50% of the children, told us, as per our survey which we conducted last year, that many of them were not able to use the initiatives by which were started off by the government, just because they did not have internet connection, just because they could not have a tablet or a phone at home, just because they did not have sufficient computers or any kind of an online solution which could support them to through the pandemic so that they can continue with their studies. And like Zishan has already mentioned कि जो vulnerable population है हमारी जो rural areas में होती है, not only that कि उनके पास इलेक्ट्रिसिटी और बाकी के प्रॉब्लम्स हैं, मगर समटाइम दे आर सो इन्वॉल्वड इन देयर ओन वर्क, क्योंकि कोविड के अंदर तो मेनी पेरेंट्स आल्सो लॉस्ट देयर जॉब्स. तो उनको ये भी होता है कि जो बच्चे घर में, दे शुड आल्सो स्टार्ट वर्किंग जस्ट टू अर्न सम मनी. तो हमारे जो इश्यूज हैं एजुकेशन और लर्निंग के, दे आर इंटीग्रेटेड विद पॉवर्टी, they are integrated with marginalized girls, जो forcefully we send them to work, या child labor के भी जो issues हैं, वो सारे इतने deeply rooted और integrated हैं. और इतने बच्चे तो already were not going to school, और COVID के बाद 2 साल तक तो वैसे ही 1.5 साल तक school बंद रहे. And when they started off, it was already a staggered approach के alternative days के ऊपर school open होंगे. At one point in time, there are going to be shifts also. तो already Pakistan faced a lot of loss even after that. And like Zishan has mentioned, कि learning losses are immense. पहले ही बच्चे जो school के अंदर जा रहे थे, टीचर के इश्यूज थे कि वहाँ पे टीचर एब्सेंटिज्म ज्यादा है, बुक्स नहीं है, अवेलेबिलिटी नहीं है, कहीं पे प्ले ग्राउंड्स नहीं है, फैसिलिटीज नहीं है. तो पाकिस्तान के जो चैलेंजेस है वो तो देवर मेनी मल्टीफोल्ड इवन प्रायर to the pandemic. और अब कोविड के बाद से situation exacerbated so much कि already अभी जो पहले के जो learning losses are, not only that we have to cope up with those, but also we have to ensure that the kids also come at par with the normal learning levels. जो एक हर बच्चे को एक ज़रूरत है कि आप एक बच्चा जो है वो इतना पढ़ पाए. As per Right to Education Act, 5 to 16 year, every child is supposed to go to school and have free and compulsory education. But we know in Pakistan that there is a right to education, constitution का part है, provinces ने, अब काफी provinces ने तो इसको आगे से इसको pass भी कर दिया हुआ है, there's a law also. But still we see that many of the kids are not going to school at all. और उसके भी various reasons है. तो COVID के बाद से तो already multiple हमारे पास challenge आ चुके हैं. Not only that कि we have to equip the schools for such kind of a pandemic कि अगर कभी दोबारा से खुदा ना खास्ता if such kind of a tragedy hits again, what are the measures that the school also is supposed to be taking? Are schools well equipped? Are teachers well equipped? Can they even teach online? Some of the teachers also, while in government schools, cannot even operate a simple computer. They are not even well equipped with that. और अगर government ऐसे initiative start off करेगी, तो we also have to ensure whether this kind of internet availability या जो smartphones की availability है, whether that is also available at home, whether kids or the caregivers are available at that time so that they can help the child to cope up with online learning. क्योंकि जो बच्चे जो urban areas के बच्चे तो maybe they will struggle a bit, but the ones in rural areas जो ज़्यादा marginalized हैं, जो बच्चे ज़्यादा marginalized हैं, जो लड़कियाँ who are actually can't even go to school properly because they are poverty struck or whatever for whatever reasons, या they are forced to for early marriages and child labor के अंदर भी चले जाते हैं. तो ये सारे issues जो है वो भी हमने देखने हैं. Not only that कि हमने अपने बच्चों के लिए कुछ ना कुछ ऐसी strategies, we have to come up with those strategies that are actually helpful for the child, but also we have to on the other hand start off with some kind of strategy that also equip the schools, especially the teachers, कि उनके पास ऐसा online material available हो. Once in a while they should also be well equipped with that कि अगर बच्चों को online learning के लिए वो कुछ थोड़ा सा motivate करें ताकि टीचर्स भी थोड़ी बहुत equipped हों before any kind of pandemic hits और एकदम उनके ऊपर सारा burden आ जाए. So that's what I'll stop here and I'll see where the conversation then takes forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Said. I think one of the points that you've raised, which we were discussing as a group a little bit earlier, is that Pakistan के अंदर एक conversation जो बार-बार होती रहती है, that's very structured on input-based conversations. So, स्कूलों की चार दीवारी है कि नहीं, स्कूलों के अंदर फर्नीचर है कि नहीं, किताबें हैं कि नहीं, टीचर्स की ट्रेनिंग है कि नहीं, हम बच्चों को स्कूल में डाल भी रहे हैं कि नहीं. But very little conversation actually happens on कि जो बच्चे स्कूल से निकल रहे हैं, what are they actually learning? उन्होंने क्या सीखा है, what kind of learning they have actually acquired through the primary education that they've been, primary, secondary, and higher education that they've been given. And as she's mentioned, the results are not nearly as good as we would have hoped. Perhaps to speak a little bit more about that, I'll request Fajr to speak about this, more specifically along the lines of how all of this disproportionately affects girls' education. But on top of that, pre, post, as she said, learning losses in Pakistan, at the intersection of what the response to this has been and whether or not that response has actually worked.
Thank you very much, Zishan. So I think, जैसे सहर ने कहा, learning education was already in a huge crisis before. 22.8 million children have been out of school. This is pre-COVID numbers. We know that at least 1 million has been added to that number as children who have dropped out of the schools after during COVID times. And we know at least 3.5 million children have been affected due to floods just now, out of which 78% are in Sindh, jahan pe already education has been a huge challenge. So jab hum log apne, if we look back our history, and we were talking about investment in education, and I'll talk more about solutions because problems बहुत सारे हैं. World Bank के हिसाब से during COVID they published a report, we have 75% learning poverty in Pakistan, which means कि जो बच्चे बाहर निकल रहे हैं education system से, at least 75% of them are not learning anything. Only one out of 5 children can read and write after completing primary education in Pakistan. This is how bad the quality of education is. So we're basically dealing with two kind of issues here. Out of school children, बच्चे वो जिनके पास कोई access है ही नहीं, जिसमें बच्चियों की तादाद ज़्यादा है. 62% of those girls, number are girls. देन उसके बाद वो बच्चे जो स्कूल्स में और वो उनको तालीम नहीं मिल रही है, बेसिकली वो जा रहे हैं, देयर इज स्टिल कॉर्पोरल पनिशमेंट दैट इज़ वेरी कॉमन, देयर इज टीचर quality of education that teachers deliver, we don't really invest in our teachers as much, so there are multiple challenges that we are looking at. So solution क्या होना चाहिए? मसला ये है कि अब पहले ही पाकिस्तान जो है इन्वेस्ट नहीं कर रहा था, जस्ट अंडर 2% हमारी ओवरऑल नेशनल इन्वेस्टमेंट है in education. It should be somewhere around 10%, and we've seen that in every government that has come in power, no one has managed to prioritize education. So if you're not going to prioritize education for our children right now, where do we see ourselves standing in 10 years? So it needs to start from the top कि investment तो पहले हमारी correct हो वहाँ पे. फिर second issue आ जाता है कि जो investment हो रही है क्या वो भी properly implement हो रही है? So at least the resources that are being allocated, they need to be implemented properly, in which it means कि आपकी जिसमें development budgets नहीं होते as such. These are mainly your teacher salaries, वो आपके running budgets, running operational costs, etc. included है. Then third thing comes कि what will happen to the children who have no access to education, particularly girls. Because बच्चों की again बात करें हम लोग तो at least 85% of the girls drop out of school before completing primary education. So जो बच्चियाँ जाती भी हैं उनमें से बहुत कम, I think around 13% girls only manage to get to grade 9 in Pakistan. This is how bad the problem is when we're looking at nationally. So multiple levels पे we have problems, we have challenges, और उस चीज़ को हमने एड्रेस कैसे करना है. और हम लोग जैसे ही पहले बात कर रहे थे कि वी नीड टू स्टॉप थिंकिंग अबाउट बीइंग इन अ वेरी स्ट्रक्चर्ड एनवायरनमेंट for education, because we don't have the resources. Pakistan does not have the resources to build schools. 85% of the government schools built in Pakistan are primary schools. You don't have enough middle schools, we don't have higher schools, we don't have enough universities. So you have a lot of problems with resources. We don't have the financial resources. As we all know, we're currently again going through extreme economic crisis. So education unfortunately किसी की priority नहीं है कि बच्चा, हम लोग जो long term planning हमें चाहिए, जो long term vision हमें चाहिए education के issues को address करने के लिए, that is lacking everywhere. And that's what needs to be, I think, prioritized to start with. और जब मैं मुल्क के हालात देखती हूँ और हमारे एजुकेशन के हालात देखती हूँ, so I love tech, but I know we cannot just simply say we're going to go full-time tech and we're going to resolve our education issues, because that's what happened in COVID. Everybody started to talk about online learning, online education. Tech is the solution to education crisis in Pakistan. There were webinars going around, left, right, center. But no, they're not the solution, not right now. We're like 20 years behind, when we're looking at our situation, because हम लोग टेक कहाँ से लेकर आए हैं? आपके पास इंटरनेट का इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर वीक है. यू गो इन रूरल एरियाज, यू हैव नो इंटरनेट इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर. अर्बन एरियाज में आपको प्रॉब्लम्स होती हैं. किसके पास अफोर्डेबिलिटी का इतना ह्यूज प्रॉब्लम है इंटरनेट का पाकिस्तान में, बिकॉज पॉवर्टी इज सो हाई. तो आप लोग कहाँ से एक्सपेक्ट करते हैं कि वो बच्चे जो नहीं स्कूल जा सकते उनको आप घरों में लैपटॉप्स दे देंगे? क्या आप पूरे पाकिस्तान में बच्चों को लैपटॉप्स दे सकते हैं घर पे, या कंप्यूटर्स दे सकते हैं, उनको इंटरनेट प्रोवाइड कर सकते हैं? नहीं कर सकते. दैट मीन्स दैट्स जस्ट नॉट पॉसिबल. एंड देन लाइक सहर हैज टच्ड बेस्ड ऑन टीचर्स कैपेसिटी. टीचर्स को खुद आता नहीं है, उनको delivering education online itself is a skill set that teachers lack. So वहाँ पे आप कितना आप लोग, और हमने देखा है कि कोविड के टाइम्स में जिन schools, the schools who switched to, and talking about private schools, who switched to online learning, we know how much mental health challenges were created for students in Pakistan. Again, there's no talk about it. तो हम लोग को, I think we need to step back, क्योंकि हम लोग क्या करते हैं कि हम लोग, वो होता है ना फायर फाइटिंग मोड में, we trying to do things कि कुछ ना कुछ जहाँ हो जाए. Teleschool, for example, was a great initiative by the government of Pakistan, but did that actually create an impact, or was that a waste of resources? Right? Because हमने कुछ ना कुछ करना था, तो हमने कुछ ना कुछ करने के चक्कर में वो कर दिया. Studies that have been done after COVID on teleschool, for example, or radio school have shown nil results कि बच्चों ने actually पढ़ा ही नहीं. अब बच्चों के लिए क्या मसला है घर में? अब स्पेशली अगर मैं लोअर मिडिल क्लास फैमिलीज़ की बात करूँ, या बच्चे जो बिल्कुल बहुत गुर्बत में रह रही हैं, उनको तो इजाज़त ही नहीं होती कि वो बैठ के टीवी देखेंगी और वो पढ़ेंगी या रेडियो लगा के सुनेंगी. उनका काम तो घर का काम संभालना है. तो where do we stand? How are we going to address issues in education, and especially for girls? और ये सारे प्रॉब्लम्स पहले भी एग्जिस्ट करते थे, मतलब ये कोई नई चीज़ें नहीं है हमारे लिए. सो व्हेन वी से कि हमें सिर्फ शौक लगता है, असल में हर थोड़े अरसे बाद देयर इज अ शॉक बिकॉज देयर इज अ रिपोर्ट विल कम आउट एंड आवर पॉलिटिकल लीडर्स एंड आवर ब्यूरोक्रेसी एंड वी पीपल इन एजुकेशन सेक्टर गेट शॉक्ड, ओ ये नया फिगर आ गया, ये तो ये कह रहा है, पर ये तो पुराने फिगर्स हैं. तो वो आई थिंक व्हाट वी नीड टू डू इज के बी वेरी सोल्यूशन ओरिएंटेड गिवन कि हमारे क्या चैलेंजेस हैं और उनको हमने किस तरह एड्रेस करना है वन बाय वन. वी डोंट हैव अ 10-year प्लान इन पाकिस्तान ऑन हाउ वी कैन एड्रेस क्राइसिस इन एजुकेशन, जिसमें से मैं हमेशा ये कहती हूँ कि सबसे बड़ा हमारा रिसोर्स हमारी टीचर्स हैं. वी नीड टू इन्वेस्ट इन देम. फॉरगेट अबाउट बिल्डिंग स्कूल्स, गो कम्युनिटी एजुकेशन programs. We've built an amazing network of 130 non-formal education schools network for primary education, and they're bringing amazing results. Not just us, there are other organizations who are doing the similar thing and building a model around it. So one of the things that we do is we try and test different things कि क्या चीज़ है जो cost effective है and can bring great results. अब हम middle education की बात करते हैं. middle education आप you wouldn't believe कि हम actually रूरल एरियाज में डिलीवर कर ही नहीं सकते. शायद पंजाब में फिर हालात बेहतर हो, लेकिन बाकी मुल्क में बिल्कुल हालात ख़राब है क्योंकि आपको मिडिल लेवल की टीचर्स ही नहीं अवेलेबल. So, so a lot has to be done on that end, and I think we need to prioritize and come up with solutions based on our problems. Forget about tech, forget about this, just because we want to run after buzzwords. I think we need to step back and look at our own realities, our own, हमारे अपना क्या हमारे पास resource मौजूद है, क्या resource है जिसको हम utilize कर सकते हैं और इसको हम उसके ऊपर build करें. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fajr. I think you touched upon a couple of very important points. The principal among them, the fact that हमारी जो long-term strategic vision or thinking or planning है, that's something that's lacking. It's not just education, actually. It's most social protection services. It's foreign policy. It's, yesterday I was on a panel called Pakistan's Place in the Regions, and one of the things that Dr. Rabia Akhtar also spoke about is कि हमारा foreign office जितना मर्जी robust हो जाए, अगर हमारी एक लॉन्ग टर्म फॉरेन पॉलिसी स्ट्रैटेजी नहीं है कि मुल्क को पोजीशन कैसे करना है, एंड सिमिलरली अगर एजुकेशन के अंदर हमारे पास एक 10-year प्लान नहीं है कि हमने एजुकेशन को किस तरह से इस मुल्क में बेहतर करना है, देन we're just going to remain stuck in firefighting mode. I know Sahar Saeed has to leave shortly, so before I come to the two of you, I'll just toss one quick question to her, and that has to do with data and bureaucracy. So we have, government institutions within this country, such as APAM, such as NIAS, that collect data on education. मेरा सवाल आपसे ये है कि क्या वो डेटा वाकई यूटिलाइज किया जाता है? फ्रॉम व्हाट आई अंडरस्टैंड, द लास्ट कलेक्टेड डेटा जिसको प्रॉपरली कोलेट किया गया था वो 2018 या 2017 या 18 से है, एंड इट बेग्स द क्वेश्चन कि अगर आपका एजुकेशन का डेटा आज से 5 साल पुराना है तो आप उस डेटा के साथ आज की डिसीजंस कैसे ले सकते हैं? अब ये हो रहा है कि एपीएम और नियास को कन्वर्ज करके एक नया अदारा बनाया जा रहा है जिसका नाम है PIE, पाकिस्तान इंस्टीट्यूट फॉर एजुकेशन. Is that right? PIE, and that's supposed to, कि जो हमारा डेटा है एजुकेशन का उसको हम सही तरह से लेवरेज करेंगे ताकि हम बेहतर डिसीजन मेकिंग कर सकें पॉलिसी मेकर्स के साथ. लेकिन सवाल फिर ये बनता है कि क्या is PIE just going to be another bureaucratic layer that effectively doesn't really do the job that it's tasked with, but is just a new flashier version of what came before?
Thank you, Zishan. So जैसे अभी ज़िशान ने मेंशन किया, मैम ने भी मेंशन किया है, द काइंड ऑफ प्रॉब्लम्स दैट वी हैव हियर इन पाकिस्तान. अब बहुत से हमारे पास डॉक्यूमेंट्स और डेटा सेट, जैसे कि ज़िशान ने मेंशन किया, बहुत मतलब वी डू हैव देम, मगर जैसे सेक्टर प्लान्स नहीं होंगे या गवर्नमेंट के प्लान्स नहीं होंगे. अगर वो भी प्लान्स भी अगर हमारे पास आ जाते हैं, टू व्हाट एक्सटेंट दे आर बीइंग इम्प्लीमेंटेड. तो देयर इज नो पॉइंट ऑफ हैविंग अ प्लान इफ यू डू नॉट हैव द कैपेसिटी टू इम्प्लीमेंट इट, एंड देयर इज नो पॉइंट ऑफ हैविंग दीज मेनी ऑफिसेज और कन्वर्जिंग देम इनटू वन सिंगल ऑफिस इफ यू डू नॉट हैव द कैपेसिटी टू रन देम आल्सो. तो जैसे ईपैम और नीस दे हैव बीन एट बिजनेस फॉर द आई गेस फॉर सिंस 2015, और वो भी डोनर लेड दोनों ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस थे व्हेन दे एक्चुअली पुश्ड यू के हमारे पास एक नेशनल एक एजुकेशन का एक सिस्टम होना चाहिए एट द फेडरल लेवल दैट इज सपोज्ड टू बी आल्सो in liaison with other provincial departments. तो अभी क्या है, आफ्टर devolution each and every province has its own assessment system. हर एक की एक अपनी assessment body है. पंजाब की अपनी, KP अपनी, बलूचिस्तान अपनी, सिंध के पास अपनी है, and then they have their own data sets and their own kind of an assessment system. अब नीस और EPAM का primarily purpose तो यही है कि वो data इस तरह से collect करें और नीस भी ऐसे assessments को design करे which can be also replicated by other provinces, which till date has not happened. नीस was supposed to be working on international also competency standards, कि वो एक ऐसा इंटरनेशनल सिस्टम जिससे कि बाहर के और भी हमारे पास एक उनकी भी असेसमेंट्स हैं जो होती हैं हर साल में होती हैं, तो पाकिस्तान के अंदर भी कुछ ऐसे assessments के ऐसे modules वो develop करें that can actually be replicated by other provinces and then they can produce a report, a comparable one. क्योंकि अगर अभी हमने भी compare करना हो तो पंजाब has its own assessment system और अगर वो कह भी देंगे कि 82% of kids are learning, Sindh is supposed to be, because Sindh का एक अलग ही assessment है, वो अपने हिसाब से assessment करेंगे. तो we do not have a single in Pakistan, आपके पास हर province का अपना है. There's not even one single book or one single data set that can be used even for international comparisons के ये एक पूरे पाकिस्तान का assessment हुआ इन तमाम बच्चों का. This was the data set and this is how, these were the findings, so that was the outcome of it. नीस और ईपैम, और अभी भी अगर हम गवर्नमेंट के डिपार्टमेंट्स में देखें, दैट इज द सेम क्वेश्चन कि वॉट एवर डाटा इज कलेक्टेड, इज दैट अवेलेबल टू द पब्लिक? कैन वी एक्चुअली यूज इट? कैन वी यूज इट फॉर आर रिपोर्ट्स? कैन वी यूज इट फॉर आर रेफरेंस? कैन वी यूज इट टू मेक स्ट्रैटेजीज? और even private entrepreneurs, can they use it for designing quick interventions जो कि helpful भी हों आगे से? अब EPAM और NEES को, it has been converted into one single department, is SPY, और अभी recently it has been converted so that कि वो और effective हो, और उसके अंदर भी वो यही primarily उनका purpose है कि वो assessments भी design करें, क्योंकि पहले भी NEES और EPAM का काम तो यही था और उन्होंने report भी create करनी है. मगर वही बात है कि अगर if the same people are working together now under one building, that will not make any sense at all. It has to be a very clear mandate. Even the federal government now needs to take a kind of a stand, or kind of a, you can say, key intervention ki it is very much needed. That whatever department you're now creating, it has to have a very clear mandate. That after like 1 year, we are going to be producing a report, or like after 6 months, we are going to be coming up with a new assessment system that can actually be replicated by all provinces. Yeah, every province is now going to be on board. Every provincial education departments are now actually coming on board so that they can liaise with PIEs also for making future strategies. There's no point if PIE also has to work in segregation, right? And if Punjab doesn't know what PIE is doing, or PIE doesn't know what Sindh government is doing, there's no point. Which, by the way, happens till date, that every province is working under their own spaces and their own capacity. They do not know, they do not come under one building कि वो आपस में कोई knowledge sharing कर लें. And that is why we do not have a single data set अभी तक till date. जो last report जैसे जिशान ने बताई, जो कि government की report है, that was back in 2018. अब तो COVID के बाद World Bank ने report निकाल दी, UNICEF ने निकाल दी, private organizations like us also are coming up with a report every now and then. But there is no single data set that is being collected by the government that you can use actually to say, okay, yes, we have been collecting this or doing this amount of work, and this is what the government is saying, and maybe our numbers do not match, or these kind of interventions are needed because the government is saying that these areas actually need a lot of help, but we do not have those numbers, sadly. So there's no point of having any department, PIE or any other, or making them converge or come together unless and until you actually make sure that the outcome of the department is also clear, or they are also having clear strategies in their head for future. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Said, for a very, very comprehensive answer. And I think that's an unfortunate state of affairs कि ना सिर्फ हमारे पास data नहीं है जिसको इस्तेमाल करके हम, we can make better decision making, but also that the process is primarily, as you said, donor-led. It doesn't really come from, the federal or the provincial governments, which seem to operate in their own sort of silos. Gul Maryam, I'll come to you if you'll allow me. I think we've spoken quite a bit about some of the issues that face the education system in Pakistan. You've worked quite a bit on digital learning, on distance learning. You've run schools for yourself. You've operated in some of the most vulnerable populations in Pakistan in terms of running these schools. From what I understand, our conversation from earlier, one of the schools that you ran also had to shut down during COVID. And I think that's a key story that I think we should speak about. And perhaps more importantly, the whole idea of skill and vocational development and training, I think, is a key area. अगर हम इस conversation से ना फंसे रहें, थोड़ा सा बाहर निकलना है.
I would like to speak more about the post-pandemic and the situation that we are in right now. And the area that I'm working in is District Okara, and it is the rural sector of education that I'm working in for the past 16 years. And as we were speaking earlier with my fellow panelist and with Zishan, I was telling him that we were actually in a learning crisis before the pandemic struck. Before we were already in a learning crisis. Pakistan has been behind, globally we've been behind in education, but we've been accelerated towards the future of education. We have been moved towards the future of education. The West was moving towards education 4.0, and we were lagging behind. I've been working in the rural sector, so I know from grassroots level the plight of the marginalized, the underprivileged, and the people whose voice I was at the National Curriculum Council, where I was a board member. So I tried to voice their plight and the way I was looking at their problems. The skill development that we were talking about in the area that I'm working, if a child is given if he is given the opportunity for a school education, and if he gets a certificate, and if the parents manage to give him a certain education, and the education is not linked to the academia and the industry linkage is not there, and the poor child who finally has a certificate in his hand and he doesn't get a job, how demotivated is the parent? How demotivated is the student? So we ended up in a situation where I was looking at the disappointment of a family. I'm talking about one family, we have thousands, we have millions out there, if I talk about the whole of Pakistan. So my role on the board of National Curriculum Council was to voice the plight and to voice and reason with the honorable board and the ministers there that we need to provide skilled education to our youth and to provide that link with academia and industry so that our future generation walks with the West. They are provided with employment as soon as they finish their education and they are not jobless. So while we were already working, as you all know, the then government we were into a change of policy. We were already working on a different, in education-wise, we were already going through a lot of changes. And the policy framework was changing 2018 onwards, and we hit the pandemic. So as you know, wherever there's a disruption, a global disruption, like a calamity strikes, the disruptions make you stop. It pauses, it makes you reflect, rethink, reevaluate on many levels. And sometimes it can make things improve. You think on what you did right and what you did wrong and what can be improved. So I have a hope narrative here. I think we all as policy makers, as implementers, as educationists, we all as stakeholders, as parents, even as students, everyone was a stakeholder, the whole country. We all came together and we realized, I think everyone for the first time became so much vocal when the single national curriculum was brought up. Everyone had a voice, they had opinions, and they were a part of that, the whole process that was coming in. So we had a lot of opinions from everybody. The skill development part also came in, and I would like to share here that in one of my suggestions, I had put up in the board that I would be really happy to have a curriculum for the specially able children, and it has just been approved at PCTB. So, things have been improved also because this was like a global crisis, not just a Pakistani pandemic. This was not something that only Pakistan was going through. So from a patriotism, we came into a global humanism prospect. We all were thinking globally. The nations from across the globe came together and they joined hands. They shared knowledge to come forward. There were conferences, there were seminars across, and they sat together to find ways to share the knowledge and to come for solutions for education. I think here we are going towards a step forward where the whole world is coming together for education. For the policy making and on government level, there's one thing that I would like to share. The government started teleschools, which was an attempt. Again, as my friend said, it wasn't as successful because of infrastructure. We were digitally, there's an inequality, there's a digital gap between urban, rural. We don't have that much infrastructure. And much as we talk about the IT and inclusivity, we have much to do there. But a teleschool was put up for everybody in the country. Then there was an afternoon school that was set up. This was one innovation that came in between the pandemic times, that the same building of the schools, I'm talking about government schools, it was used as afternoon school, and in batches, teachers and students used to come to make up for any loss of classes. And just recently, a month ago, Insaf Academy has been launched, which is something like Khan Academy, that they have lectures online. It's a free app. From class 9 to 12, you have lectures online, and it's a very interactive website. It's totally free of cost. You can, to curb the tuition system and to provide lectures online. So the thing is that when there is a pandemic or a situation like when the studies stop, you do have some sort of improvement that comes in. And when I talk about my own area, in my rural schools, I was just telling Zishan, like COVID has not been kind. One of my schools shut down because we have a patriarchal society, and there's a problem that you convince people to send the girl child to school, and we had mine are non-profit schools, so people had problems just to we had transitions. I had to convince my teachers to bring batches to school, and when there was a learning hazard there, they weren't learning enough. One day we would tell them you come to school, and the other day we would tell them don't come to school. So we had problems there. But again, I have a narrative of hope. My other school, I just digitized it in the sense that we put laptops there and computers, and we have an accredited computer course there. Now my girls who are ages 17 to 25, young women and girls, they're digitally equipped and they are doing computer courses. So where there is something that we lose in the pandemic, we gain something also.
Thank you, Gula Mariam. I'm just a little cognizant of the time to make sure that Lala Rukh also gets to say her piece. What I'm grateful to you, especially though, is that a lot of the conversation that we have about education in this country, it seems very hopeless sometimes. So I'm glad for the fact that you थोड़ी सी hope उजागर की है हमारे अंदर.
I always have a hope narrative because, after I always say that the darkest hour is just before dawn. So I really believe that, however disappointed one does get, there's always hope. So that's my point.
So I'm grateful to you for that. And I think आपका एक छोटा सा point था बीच में, which, in the flow of conversation, perhaps it didn't register, but having that special education curriculum approved, I think is a huge step for Pakistan. And it's very, very important for us.
Sorry, just to add one more thing. We have the first transgender school in Pakistan.
Yep. So the point being कि ठीक है, हम जब ये education के बारे में conversation करते हैं, there's a lot of doom and gloom, but there are also good things that are happening, and they should also be summarily acknowledged. Lala Rukh, I'll come to you. I understand that your background primarily focuses on STEM education, and I think it would be good to have your perspective on the effect that these things have on kids, especially girls, as we've been speaking throughout. And the conversation that we had earlier about, the whole idea of aaj kya seekha, this sense ke jo learning hai, usko humne inculcate karna hai across society. It can't just be, there's a famous quote by, I believe it's Twain, which says that, I have never allowed university or college to interfere with my education. So the idea being कि वो lifelong process है और हमें उसको उसी अंदाज से देखना चाहिए. Please.
Thank you so much. बहुत शुक्रिया. I think कि I'll start with your question. वरना तो यहाँ पे इतनी सारी बातें हुई हैं. There's so much to add. लेकिन जो आपने बात कही कि ये जो output focused बात है कि आज क्या सीखा, इसका ताल्लुक बहुत गहराई से हमारे काम के साथ भी है. हम एक इदारा रन करते हैं जिसका नाम साइंस फ्यूज़ है, जो पाकिस्तान में साइंस की तालीम के मयार को बेहतर करने के लिए काम कर रहा है. और जब हम साइंस या साइंसदान के बारे में बात करते हैं तो अक्सर बहुत स्टीरियोटिपिकल इमेजेस जो हैं हमारे माइंड में आते हैं. तो यहाँ लोग जैसे बैठे हैं, दे बिलोंग टू डिफरेंट बैकग्राउंड्स. यहाँ कुछ लोग हैं जो मे बी पॉलिसी मेकर्स हैं, बहुत सारे स्टूडेंट्स हैं, a lot of young people, and then there are people from all walks of life. And if I ask you to close your eyes and imagine a scientist, or if I ask you कि आपकी ज़िंदगी में साइंस का कोई दखल है या आपका साइंस से कोई लेना देना है, then a lot of people have to think very hard कि अच्छा मैं साइंस नहीं ये मेरे काम की चीज़ नहीं है, या that's not something I engage with on a daily basis. So आज क्या सीखा, इसको हम अपने काम में भी इस तरह कनेक्ट करते हैं कि दुनिया भर में अब एक कॉन्वर्सेशन हो रही है, एंड दिस इज रिसर्च बेस्ड कॉन्वर्सेशन जिसको आप लोग यू कैन लुक इनटू इट मोर बिकॉज देयर आर लॉट ऑफ यंग पीपल हियर, व्हिच इज कॉल्ड साइंस कैपिटल. हम इसको कहते हैं साइंस की जमा पूंजी उर्दू की जुबान में. तो आपकी सबकी ना साइंस की एक जमा पूंजी होती है और वो घट सकती है या बढ़ सकती है, और वो जमा पूंजी जो है वो सिर्फ स्कूल की 4 दीवारी तक महदूद नहीं है. जैसे आपने कहा कि वो यूनिवर्सिटी और कॉलेजेस में मुझे सारी साइंस नहीं सीखने को मिलेगी. वो साइंस की जमा पूंजी ऐसे भी है कि क्या मैं कभी साइंस के किसी मेले में गई हूँ या किसी साइंस के म्यूजियम में गई हूँ, या मेरी अम्मी और अब्बू जो है घर पे साइंस के बारे में मेरे से बात करते हैं, या मैं शायद अवेयर हूँ कि जब मैं अपनी गाड़ी या अपनी मोटरसाइकिल ठीक कराने गई थी तो वहाँ जो मैकेनिक थे उसने फिजिक्स शायद इस्तेमाल करके वो पंक्चर जो है वो फिक्स किया, तो उसका साइंस कैपिटल मेरे से शायद ज्यादा हाई है, उसकी साइंस की जमा पूंजी शायद हायर है, लेकिन उसको साइंसदान कोई नहीं कहता। सो यू नो दिस थिंग अबाउट कि मैंने आज क्या सीखा, और जब हम साइंस और मैथ्स की तालीम की बात करते हैं, वी नीड टू चेंज हाउ वी टॉक अबाउट दीज थिंग्स, वी नीड टू ब्रॉडन कि लर्निंग जो है वो जो एक कन्वेंशनल तरीके से हो रही है एक तो हमारे स्कूल्स के अंदर, उसको तो रिवैम्प करने की ज़रूरत है, लेकिन लर्निंग की को पहले रीडिफाइन भी करने की ज़रूरत है। और दुनिया भर में ये काम हो चुका है, हम बहुत पीछे हैं। लेकिन ये जो साइंस कैपिटल की रिसर्च है ये अभी थोड़ी रिसेंट है, जो इस बात पे फोकस कर रही है कि अगर किसी की साइंस की जमा पूंजी कम रहती है तो उनकी फिर जो स्टेम एस्पिरेशंस हैं वो भी कम रहते हैं, यानी कि कुछ खास तबके, कुछ खास ग्रुप्स के लोग जो हैं वो साइंस के करियर्स और साइंस के प्रोफेशन से दूर रहते हैं। आपको क्या लगता है पाकिस्तान में वो कौन से लोग होंगे जो साइंस की तालीम या साइंस के करियर से दूर रहते होंगे? एक तो उसमें लड़कियां हैं, उसमें लड़के भी हैं, उसमें रिलीजियस माइनॉरिटीज होंगी, उसमें जैसे गुल मरियम ने कहा स्पेशली एबल्ड बच्चे भी होंगे। ये मैं कोई तहकीक नहीं हुई है, ये सिर्फ मैं जो करंट नॉलेज है उसके हिसाब से बता रही हूँ, बट एक्चुअली में तहकीक होनी चाहिए। देयर शुड बी रिसर्च डन ऑन कि वो कौन लोग हैं जो साइंस से महरूम है। अब वाई इज दिस सो इम्पोर्टेंट? क्योंकि साइंस की तालीम, साइंस और मैथ्स की तालीम की जब आप बुनियाद बनाते हैं ना, तो वो सिर्फ इसलिए ज़रूरी नहीं है कि आपने बड़े होकर साइंसदान बनना है। आपके मुल्क में अभी बहुत 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 बड़ा फ्लड आया है, और ये सिर्फ हमारे मुल्क के लिए एक बहुत बड़ी कैटास्ट्रोफी नहीं है, इट्स वन ऑफ द बिगेस्ट कैटास्ट्रोफीज इन द वर्ल्ड। एंड you know why this has happened, because of climate change. We're here now, the problems have arrived, they've been arriving for a very long time, but अब तो हम हैं उधर। तो मैं एक किताब पढ़ी थी जिसमें ये लिखा था कि ये जो हमारी स्पीशीज है अभी ये अगले 1000 साल भी अगर सर्वाइव कर जाए तो बहुत बड़ी अचीवमेंट होगी। The human race might not be able to survive even 1000 years. I know it sounds very gloomy, but this is, आपको ये प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व करने के लिए कौन चाहिए? वो लोग चाहिए आप जैसे लोग जिनकी साइंस और मैथ्स, आर्ट्स, डिफरेंट फील्ड्स की बुनियाद पुख्ता होनी चाहिए। सबने बड़े होकर साइंसदान नहीं बनना, but they have to become problem solvers. And when they become problem solvers, आपकी इकोनॉमी भी बेहतर होगी। They will create jobs themselves. क्लाइमेट चेंज के क्राइसिस को सॉल्व करने के लिए वी लिव इन अ सिटी जहां पे सर्दियों में वर्स्ट एयर क्वालिटी होती है। लाहौर रैंक्स हाईएस्ट, राइट? और ये कितने सालों से हो रहा है? 3 सालों से हो रहा है। और इसका सोल्यूशन किसने सोचा है? और ये सोल्यूशन आप सोचेंगे, ये लोग सोचेंगे। सो साइंस और मैथ्स की एजुकेशन को इम्प्रूव करना इसलिए ज़रूरी नहीं है कि आप साइंसदान बने, पर एवरीवन नीड्स दिस। लेकिन मैं एक बात करूँगी, यहाँ पे इतनी सारी बातें हुई कि when we talk about the problems and then we talk about solutions, और ऐसे लगता है कि ये बड़ा मुश्किल काम है। These things are very complex. They are complex, so they will take time. जैसे फजर ने कहा, गुल मरियम ने कहा, आपने भी कहा, अगर आपके पास 10 साल का 20 साल का प्लान नहीं है, I mean, what are you doing really? और ये बहुत सिंपल बातें हैं। फिर उसके बाद we need to go back to the basics. ये काम, ये प्रॉब्लम्स और ममालिक में सॉल्व हो चुके हैं, तो आपको व्हील को रीइन्वेंट करने की जरूरत नहीं है ना। अभी यहाँ पे इसी कॉन्वर्सेशन में 5-6 दफा जिक्र आया है टीचर्स को एम्पावर करने का। साइंस फ्यूज एक प्रोजेक्ट पे काम कर रहा है जिसका नाम है स्टीम पाकिस्तान, जिसको मलाला फंड सपोर्ट कर रहा है, एंड वी वर्किंग विद पाकिस्तान अलायंस फॉर मैथ्स एंड साइंस इन 10 गवर्नमेंट स्कूल्स इन विद सपोर्ट फ्रॉम FDE। अब उन स्कूल्स में जब हम देखते हैं तो टीचर्स का जो रवैया है, they don't want to learn. Some are enthusiastic and they want to learn. So, और वो टीचर्स हैं जो कई सालों से अपनी गवर्नमेंट की जॉब पे हैं। अब इनकी इतनी भी बुरी सैलरीज नहीं है, इतने भी बुरे हालात नहीं है, but they are not willing to, bring in the change. फिर दूसरी बात ये कि लेकिन ये वो टीचर्स हैं जिनको कई सालों से कभी कोई ट्रेनिंग मिली ही नहीं है। 10-15 साल से कोई ट्रेनिंग नहीं मिली। ये किस मुल्क में होता है? और मुझे बताएं इसमें क्या रॉकेट साइंस है? If I tell you to train your teachers, it's a very simple solution. Just train them. And there is enough work being done in this country कि आपके पास इतना अच्छा material है. There's tele school, there's so much happening कि the government can actually take that and train the teachers. In a country like Finland, जहाँ education का म्यार बहुत अच्छा है, there's something that they've noted कि वहाँ teaching is a very prestigious profession. So people, young people like yourself, they really want to get into, and it's a very hard to get into, teaching profession. तो आप आज जो यूनिवर्सिटी से लोग निकल रहे हैं, स्पेशली जो साइंस, टेक्नोलॉजी, मैथ्स, उनके आगे ना एकेडेमिया और इंडस्ट्री में जॉब्स नहीं हैं. आप उनको 2 साल का कॉन्ट्रैक्ट दें और अपने 13,000 हाई स्कूल्स में प्लेस करें. इवन इफ यू पे फॉर देयर सैलरीज फॉर 2 years, 5 से 10 साल में चेंज आएगा. यूर इन्वेस्टिंग इन चिल्ड्रन, राइट? जो अगले 5 से 10 साल में वो चेंज आएगा, यकीनन आएगा. इसमें क्या रॉकेट साइंस है? बट फॉर दैट यू नीड मनी, यू नीड फंड्स. So as Fajr said कि अगर आप willing ही नहीं है invest करने के लिए, आपकी priority नहीं है education, then we keep talking in circles, we keep talking हाय कितना मुश्किल है. It's actually not that complicated. You need to go back to the basics and be serious about solving this. People, governments and countries who have really solid economies, who are leaders, they invest in children, they invest in education, not only at a time of crisis, but overall and, generally. So that's what the government needs to do, or other stakeholders.
Thank you, Lala Rukh. I think you've brought up again, as the rest of the panelists, some very, very important points. ये जो पूरा point है about problem solving and critical thinking skills, I think it's one of the areas that we lack in the most. Maybe recently, a friend of mine was speaking to me. She's pursuing her second master's, और उसने मुझे ये कहा कि आप, this is a major university in Pakistan. उन्होंने मुझे कहा कि तासुर ये है कि अगर आप टीचर से बहुत ज़्यादा सवाल जवाब करेंगे तो टीचर आपको फेल कर सकता है. Which is, inconceivable to me कि आप एक यूनिवर्सिटी में हैं, अगर आप यूनिवर्सिटी में सवाल नहीं करेंगे तो क्या आप सड़क पे करेंगे, मतलब मस्जिद में करेंगे, आप घर में कहां पे सवाल करेंगे? I mean, the university space is designed for you to ask questions and to build your critical thinking skills.
And this is a very important thing कि ये सिर्फ यूनिवर्सिटी का हाल नहीं है, ये हमारे माशरे का हाल है. So a lot of things in our region and our country, वो आपकी क्यूरियोसिटी, तजस्सुस को मारते हैं. So जब आप साइंस को प्रमोट करते हैं, एक सबसे बड़ी चीज है आप स्केप्टिसिज्म को लेके आते हैं सामने. साइंस आपको सवाल करना सिखाती है, and that's why it's so important कि this has to be built in everywhere.
Yeah, I completely agree. और वो जो सवाल करने वाला जो हमने पहले बात की थी, आज क्या सीखा, perhaps the precursor to that, तो आज क्या सीखा should be सवाल तो पूछो, क्योंकि अगर आप सवाल पूछेंगे नहीं तो आप critical thinking पे कैसे जाएंगे? We have about 10 minutes for some question and answers, if there are any from the audience. If you have a question, please direct it to one of the 3 speakers that are on stage.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm Dr. Nimra Afzal and I'm serving as an assistant professor in University of Central Punjab. So my question is to Ms. Maryam. Yes. You spoke about the schools that you have opened a school for transgenders. Is it?
The government is.
Okay.
Punjab government.
Punjab government. So my question is, why we are opening up separate schools for the transgenders? We are already talking about the inclusiveness, right? So why we are having exclusive schools? And because you are the voice at the national level, there is always a concern that we are already trying to exclude them while we talk about the inclusiveness. So my question is to you thus. Thank you.
It's a very good question, because many people think that it is not about inclusivity, but we are actually giving the transgenders the privacy and the place that they require, because there was an experiment and where they have been admitted to the school with children who are not transgenders, there have been problems. So this is a specific school just for them, and it is a first attempt. So let's welcome a good gesture that has been done, and because we are accepting now, there is a bill that has been passed, that we are, promoting this thing. We are accepting that they need education and they will be given employment. And it is about inclusivity, and it is accepting them into our society. And this has been the first time. There hasn't been you give me one example that there has been anything that has been done like this before. And I'm not a spokesperson for the government, so I'm just speaking for education.
Okay, that's fine because you are the voice at the national forum. You are advising them. You are the member of the board. That's the reason I'm talking about it. Just to add up the information, we in UCP do have transgender students, and there is I'm not very much sure about the percentage, but we do have transgender students, and I'm teaching there. So the thing is, if you will talk to them or communicate to them to add these special or transgender children in the school, eventually the girls, the boys will eventually understand them and accept them as a member of educational system, rather than it's a school, it's a college, or it's anything. So if it's a very good initiative. If you think about that, having a
Sorry, my
separate
apologies. I'm just cognizant of the time. I want to make sure other people in the audience have a chance to ask questions.
Just to include it, you should please communicate to the forum and the right persons to encourage inclusiveness. Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am.
Assalamu alaikum ji. My question is for Gul Maryam. We are in a country where different streams of education are being followed. O-levels, international baccalaureate, high school diploma. Then we have public schools, government schools. Then we have private schools, then elite schools in different categories. Working and bringing this SNC is Barish ka pehla qatra, and we all appreciate that. मुझे आपसे पूछना ये है कि while bringing that single national curriculum in place, and later on when you started implementing, what challenges you faced and how quickly you got it in place? My question, you might find my question a layman's question because I am from higher education, but this is again, we start from the, primary education and from roots to up.
Sure.
So, please.
It's a very good question, Ji. The challenges are still there because policy making is something that is, so many educators sat together, so many heads of public, private schools. We had Aga Khan University, we had LUMS heads with us, we had, all ulama with us, heads of madaris. For policy making, all provinces were together with us. When the point of implementation came, we had a lot of agitation. As you know, even now, we had a lot of challenge, and the challenges are still there because some people find it the mode of instruction, some people find that there's a lot of Urdu there, some people find the textbooks, because there's a lot of improvement that has to be made. So, I always say the best time to do something was yesterday and the second best is now. So improvement is something that we keep on doing each and every passing day. The challenges have been many, especially from the private sector. The public sector really welcomed. I myself have, as I just told you, I have my non-profit, so they are in the rural area. So my teachers just welcomed it. They said it's a step up from what we were already teaching, and the books are of good quality. The public sector really welcomed. The private sector, they gave us a few challenges, and we are still in the process. So the challenges were quite a few, but we are just trying. Thank you.
I think we have time for maybe one more question.
Assalamu alaikum.
Sorry, just very quickly. I'll just pose a question to you as well. Earlier, we were having a conversation on how much is spent per child in countries that prioritize education. And perhaps that's a figure that you can also sort of share with the audience in addition to the question.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
I have basically two questions. First question is to Ms. Fajr. My question is, what is the problem with the content? Because the content which we are giving to our child in the primary education or the middle education is still the same that we were giving 10 years ago. So what is the problem with that? Because the technical things and the education is so much evolving in the world. So what is the problem with the content? And the second question is to Ms. Lala. Can these NGOs or the private organization fill that gap? Because the private organization are taking this like for the source of money or sort of business, you can say. So can these fill that gap?
अच्छा, जब हम कंटेंट की बात करते हैं, लेट्स जैसे प्राइमरी एजुकेशन के कंटेंट की बात करते हैं, तो एक तो कांस्टेंट प्रोसेस, जैसे गुल मरियम ने बताया कि वो चल रहा है उसको अपडेट करने का। जब मैं इसको जेंडर पर्सपेक्टिव से देखती हूँ तो आई वुड से कि यस, मोर वर्क नीड्स टू बी डन टू मेक इट मोर जेंडर रिस्पॉन्सिव। इसी तरह जैसे हम ट्रांसजेंडर्स की बात कर रहे थे, तो द कंटेंट नीड्स टू बी मोर रिस्पॉन्सिव इन दैट मैनर, क्योंकि हम लोग असल में जब हम माशरे को देखते हैं, देखिए तालीम एक हम माशरे की फाउंडेशन बिल्ड करती है। आप जो किताब में सिखा देंगे वही बच्चा पढ़ लेगा, सीख लेगा और उसी माइंडसेट के साथ बड़ा होगा। तो बहुत ज़रूरी है कि हमारा स्कूल्स का जो किताबों का कंटेंट है राइट फ्रॉम प्राइमरी एजुकेशन नीड्स टू बी वेरी रिस्पॉन्सिव टू आवर सोशल नीड्स। और किस तरह डिविजन्स हुई हैं हमारी सोसाइटी में, जैसे हम रिलीजियस माइनॉरिटीज़ की बात करते हैं, बट वी सीक अ लॉट दैट देयर इज़ अ लॉट ऑफ इम्प्रूवमेंट इन द सिंगल नेशनल करिकुलम, जिसमें काम होना शुरू हुआ है, लेकिन और बहुत ज़्यादा करने की ज़रूरत है। अच्छा, उससे फिर सबसे ज़्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट चीज़ जो टीचर्स की, मैं बार बार टीचर्स की बात करती हूँ कि कंटेंट आप जितना मर्जी अमेजिंग बना लेंगे, लेकिन अगर आपकी टीचर्स की कैपेसिटी नहीं है उसको डिलीवर करने की, तो वो आपका एक जो एफर्ट है वो फेल हो जाएगा। और इसीलिए मैं प्लानिंग की बात करती हूँ कि आप जब गवर्नमेंट, चाहे वो आप प्रोविजनल गवर्नमेंट, प्रोविंशियल गवर्नमेंट्स देखें या फेडरल गवर्नमेंट देखें, जब तक आप एक प्लान बना के नहीं बैठेंगे, वो बात में होती है कि हमारा टास्क जाइंट है, कॉम्प्लिकेटेड नहीं है। दैट्स व्हाट आई से। नन ऑफ दिस इज रॉकेट साइंस। आप उसको बैठ के जब आप उसको बिट बाय बिट देखेंगे और उसको ब्रेक डाउन कर लेंगे, हमें बचपन में यही सिखाया गया था कि मसला जब बड़ा सा लग रहा होगा तो उसको तोड़ दो, हिस्सों को उसमें डिवाइड कर दो और उसको फिर एक एक हिस्से को देखो उसको किस तरह हल करना है। एंड दैट्स हाउ यू एड्रेस द इश्यूज, एंड दैट्स व्हाट वी नीड टू डू। कि अगर करिकुलम अमेजिंग बन रहा है तो टीचर्स की कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग हुई है, लेकिन बहुत कम हुई है। करने की बहुत ज़्यादा कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग करने की ज़रूरत है, स्पेशली रूरल एरियाज़ में। तो ये काम जो है मेरे ख्याल से कंटेंट, मैं दो के इस पर्सपेक्टिव की ज़रूर हूँ कि अगर हम लोग एक इन्वेस्टमेंट कर रहे हैं, क्योंकि हमारे मुल्क के पास पैसे नहीं हैं, सीधी सी बात है, तो हम बार बार जो रिविजन्स में जाएंगे तो आप वो इन्वेस्टमेंट, आप रिसोर्स फिर से आप इन्वेस्ट कर रहे हैं बार बार। एक दफ़ा बैठ के उसको एक दफ़ा असेस करके कि कहाँ गैप्स हैं और उसको एक दफ़ा प्रॉपरली चीज़ को एड्रेस किया जाए, इसको अप टू डेट किया जाए। दैट्स व्हाट आई फील कि हम लोग को करने की ज़रूरत है। बेशक कि हम ये कहेंगे कि हाँ छोटी छोटी चीज़ें होती हैं, वो बहुत अच्छा काम है, एक हमें होप मिलती है उससे, लेकिन वो अक्सर सिर्फ PR स्टंट्स रह जाते हैं। आप नेशनली जब हम देखते हैं तो मैं पिछले 10 साल के फिगर्स देखूंगी तो मुझे चेंज नज़र नहीं आ रहा, फिगर्स में चेंज नज़र नहीं आ रहा। स्टैट्स स्पीक, दो कि हमारे स्टैट्स का बहुत बड़ा प्रॉब्लम है, लेकिन जो हमारे पास मौजूद हैं दे स्पीक लाउड एंड क्लियर। 4 चीज़ें सिर्फ आप उठा लेंगे तो आपको समझ आ जाएगी कि हमारा तालीम का कहाँ कहाँ कितना मसला है और उसको किस तरह हम एड्रेस कर सकते हैं।
Very quickly, so दुनिया भर में जो प्रॉब्लम्स होते हैं उनको सॉल्व करने के लिए सिर्फ गवर्नमेंट जो है वो आगे नहीं बढ़ती, बहुत सारे और स्टेक होल्डर्स भी होते हैं जो उन प्रॉब्लम्स को टैकल करते हैं। सो उनमें से एक कैटेगरी जैसे सोशल एंटरप्राइजेस की है। आई नो पाकिस्तान में ये टर्म थोड़ी नई है, यहाँ पे कोई आई थिंक लीगल एंटिटी भी नहीं है इस तरह की कि आप यू कैन रजिस्टर योर सेल्फ एज अ सोशल एंटरप्राइज, पर मैं थोड़ा सा इसकी वजाहत कर देती हूँ। तो जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल आप देखते हैं कि कोई गैप है आपकी कम्युनिटी में, आपके एरिया में, एनवायरनमेंट में हो सकता है, एजुकेशन में हो सकता है, एग्रीकल्चर में हो सकता है, और आप बेड़ा उठाते हैं कि मैंने इस प्रॉब्लम को सॉल्व करना है। अब उस प्रॉब्लम को सॉल्व करने के लिए आपको रिसोर्सेज चाहिए होंगे, राइट? आपको ह्यूमन रिसोर्स चाहिए, आपको फंड्स चाहिए। अब वो रिसोर्सेज आप कैसे गैदर करते हैं? या कुछ सोशल एंटरप्राइजेज ऐसी होती हैं जो प्योरली ग्रांट बेस्ड होती हैं, यानी कि वो ग्रांट्स के लिए अप्लाई करती हैं और इस तरह के इदारे मौजूद होते हैं, गवर्नमेंट हो दूसरे हों, जो उनको ग्रांट्स देती हैं और फिर वो काम करते हैं। फिर इस तरह के भी इदारे होते हैं जो हाइब्रिड होते हैं, कि यानी जो जैसे कि जिसकी मिसाल एक साइंस फ्यूज है, कि आप कुछ काम ऐसे सपोर्ट करते हैं जो आपको ग्रांट्स मिलती हैं, और फिर बाकी का काम जो होता है वो ऐसे सपोर्ट होता है कि आपका एंड रिजल्ट जो है वो एक सोशल इम्पैक्ट है, यानी आप किसी मसले का हल ढूंढ रहे हैं। फॉर एग्जाम्पल आप एजुकेशन के जरिए बच्चों की जिंदगियां ट्रांसफॉर्म कर रहे हैं या कर रही हैं, लेकिन उसके लिए आपके पास एक बिजनेस मॉडल, एक सस्टेनेबिलिटी का मॉडल होना चाहिए, क्योंकि आप 1 दिन करें, 2 दिन करें, उसके बाद क्या करें, कैसे करें? उसको रन करने के लिए आपको मे बी लोगों को हायर करना पड़ेगा, उनकी सैलरीज देनी पड़ेगी, राइट? तो फिर आप एक बिजनेस मॉडल क्रिएट करते हैं जो उसको सपोर्ट करता है एक सस्टेनेबिलिटी को मद्देनजर रखते हुए। और इस तरह की सोशल एंटरप्राइजेस दुनिया भर में बहुत हैं। जैसे जिस सोशल एंटरप्राइज में मैं काम कर रही थी कुछ साल पहले नॉर्वे में, वो यही काम कर रहे हैं कि स्टेम एजुकेशन की क्वालिटी नॉर्वे जैसे मुल्क में कैसे बेहतर की जाए, और उनके हार्ट पे दे हैव अ बिजनेस मॉडल जो उनको सपोर्ट करता है। अब एनजीओज जैसे होती हैं वो ज्यादातर सिर्फ ग्रांट्स वगैरह पे रिलाई करती हैं। तो इट्स इम्पोर्टेंट कि गवर्नमेंट लोकल जो सॉल्यूशंस हैं जो कम्युनिटी ड्रिवन है उनको सपोर्ट करें। बाहर से सॉल्यूशंस लाके यहाँ पे थोपना, उनको कॉपी पेस्ट करना डजंट मेक एनी सेंस। तो यहाँ पे बहुत सारी एनजीओज हैं, बहुत सारे ऐसे इदारे हैं जो कई सालों से काम कर रहे हैं एजुकेशन सेक्टर में और भी बहुत सारे सेक्टर्स में। आपको रिजल्ट्स नहीं नजर आते तो इट्स वेरी राइट ऑफ यू टू क्वेश्चन कि ये क्या कर रहे हैं। सो आई थिंक what needs to be done is कि गवर्नमेंट उन लोगों को एम्पावर करे जो ग्रास रूट लेवल पे काम कर रहे हैं। वी नो ऑफ पीपल जो बलोचिस्तान में, जैसे सुमेरा महबूब साहिबा जिनके साथ मैंने काम किया है, जो बलोचिस्तान में एक लड़कियों का स्कूल चलाती हैं और इतना अमेजिंग काम कर रही हैं। और हमने पेंडेमिक में उनके साथ फ्रॉम अ डिस्टेंस काम किया और उनकी कम्युनिटी में और उनकी लड़कियों में एक चेंज लेके आए। सो ऐसे लोगों को एम्पावर करने के लिए गवर्नमेंट उनको पैसे दे सकते हैं, रिसोर्सेज दे सकते हैं ताकि वो अपना मॉडल इंप्लीमेंट करें। फिर गवर्नमेंट उस सोल्यूशन को लेके स्केल भी कर सकती है और करना भी चाहिए, क्योंकि वो उस कम्युनिटी में रहती हैं, उन्हें पता है मसाइल क्या है, उन्हें पता है कि बेस्ट सोल्यूशंस क्या हैं। और इस तरह की सपोर्ट आपको कम्युनिटी लेवल पे लोकल सोल्यूशंस को देनी चाहिए।
Thank you very much, Lala Rukh, for that comprehensive answer. I think I'll just summarize एक बड़ा robust, बड़ा comprehensive panel हमारे सामने आज बैठा है। मेरे लिए तो बहुत सारी चीजें जो हैं I have learned quite a bit, and that's I think the point of all of this. I think we were speaking earlier about कि एक दूसरे से सीखना जो है वो बड़ा जरूरी है, that learning bit that we were speaking about. Just a couple of points that I've picked up from you. I think one of the very key points was कि जो education का मसला है पाकिस्तान में वो complicated नहीं है, वो just tedious है। हमें उसको constituent parts में break down करना है और उसको जरा flesh out करना है। दूसरा पॉइंट ये कि हमारी कोई लॉन्ग टर्म 10 साल की 20 साल की स्ट्रैटेजी नहीं है जो कि हमें बनानी, जिसके बारे में हमें सोचना बहुत जरूरी है। हमें प्रायोरिटाइज करनी चाहिए लर्निंग एंड नॉट फ्लैशी नंबर्स। फ्लैशी नंबर्स या पीआर स्टंट्स जिसे आप कह रही थी, उनको करना बड़ा एक आसान काम है और अक्सर जब ये रिपोर्ट्स निकलती हैं तो छक्के छूट जाते हैं और तोते उड़ जाते हैं और इस किस्म की चीजें हो जाती हैं और फिर 2-4 पीआर स्टंट्स किए जाते हैं, लेकिन लॉन्ग टर्म में इसका कोई इफेक्ट नहीं पड़ता। Using data to inform decision making, I think is very very important कि आपके पास डेटा होना चाहिए, robust डेटा जिसको आप प्रॉपर्ली कलेक्ट करें, कोलेट करें, और एक इदारा जो कि अब इंशाल्लाह पाए होगा उसको देखकर उसके हिसाब से भी डिसीजन मेकर्स के सामने रखे कि आप ये डेटा इस्तेमाल करके बेहतर डिसीजन मेकिंग कर सकते हैं। क्रिटिकल थिंकिंग और प्रॉब्लम सॉल्विंग एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट चीज है। सवाल पूछना एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट चीज है, खासतौर पर यूनिवर्सिटी स्कूल लेवल्स पे। और जैसे कि हमने पहले कहा कि परहैप्स आज क्या सीखा से पहले हमें ये कहना चाहिए कि भाई सवाल तो पूछो, क्योंकि वो पूछना एक बड़ी इंपॉर्टेंट बात है। और आखिरी पॉइंट विच आई थिंक लाला रुख ब्रॉट अप वाज कि हमें जरूरत है कि हम ग्रास रूट्स लेवल पे जो एंटरप्राइजेस हैं उनको जरा थोड़ा सा एम्पावर करें, बिकॉज लोकल कम्युनिटीज के अंदर जिस किस्म का काम हो रहा है वो आई थिंक शायद गवर्नमेंट स्कूल्स भी उस तरह का काम नहीं कर पा रहे। My very sincere thanks to our 4 panelists. Sahar Saeed has unfortunately had a different commitment. She had to leave earlier. To Fajr, to Gul Maryam, to Lala Rukh for sparing their time with us this evening. And my sincere thanks also to the Dunya Foundation, the Indus Conclave, this massive event that they have put together, and the Punjab group of colleges for all of their support in bringing all of us together. A big round of applause and thank you very much for attending. Thank you very much. Take care and Khuda Hafiz.